Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time you're watching this. My name's Connor from 905 Review. You guys are checking out our series Give This a Spin, where I recommend you some of my favorite albums. And today we have a lovely, soulful classic coming from none other than Otis Redding, his compilation, The Dock of the Bay.
Sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time.
Otis Redding grew up in Macon, Georgia in the 1940s, where music found its way into his life early on, to say the least. Even as a kid, he would be singing in the church's choir, while he would also pick up guitar, piano, and drums. This set him on a pretty good path because later in life, he would perform as part of his high school band, while also singing for the local radio station on weekends. So not only was he already earning good money for his age, he was about to find his big break. He would perform at a talent show where he would gain the attention of popular local guitarist Johnny Jenkins. So Jenkins noticed Redding's potential and offered to pair up, and when they did, they would win that same talent show many times over. The two continued to work together in some different bands across the years, but Jenkins didn't have a driver's license, so Otis would drive him around wherever he needed to be. And one particular time was actually a drive to Memphis, because Jenkins was being sought out by Atlantic Records, who booked studio time for him to perform with Booker T and the MGs. Now this session was less than ideal. It ended up ending 40 minutes early, and so Otis figured, hey, no point letting the time go to waste. I'll just hop in and record something. And one of the songs Otis recorded here, These Arms of Mine, blew everybody in the studio away, and it actually got him signed to Atlantic Records. And not long after, the song was released, becoming a big hit. And really in no time, Redding would establish himself. Between 1964 and 1967, he released 6 albums, while also putting on some stellar shows at big-name venues like the Apollo, the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Fillmore, and the Monterey Pop Festival. Next in store for Otis was an album that would be inspired by the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and while many people in his camp weren't really on board, Redding knew he wanted to expand his sound and was really happy with the most recent song he had come up with, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. But in a huge shock to the entire world, only a couple days after recording this, Redding was on his way to a show where his plane would crash, killing him at only 26 years old, alongside 4 of his 5 bandmates, their valet, and their pilot. Sitting on the Dock of the Bay would be released as a single 2 months later as one final hurrah from Otis, and it became his biggest hit and was actually the first ever posthumous release to go #1 on the Billboard. A month later, it would headline this compilation here, serving as one last testimony from the legend. Rightly so, this release opens with its titular song, and while people in Otis's circle were kind of weary of his change in musical direction, Otis knew that this was going to be a hit.
I left my home in Georgia, headed for the Frisco Bay.
Now you could say part of its success came due to the story around it being recorded so shortly before his untimely death, but at the same time, it's impossible to gauge what kind of reception it would have received otherwise. Of course, it was a great tragedy that took the lives of nearly everybody that was on board, but with that being said, the song almost feels like a peaceful send-off. He's just relaxing, watching the tide roll.
Sit at the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Ooh.
On the contrary, though, it is kind of eerie and unsettling that of all the possible ways they could have died, it was crashing into a lake, and their passing just kind of makes some of these lyrics look all the more nihilistic. We follow this up with a short stretch of previously unreleased songs, with the next one being the ever bluesy I Love You More Than Words Can Say. It's very tender. I think this makes for great slow dancing music between its easy pace and Otis's incredible display of soul.
Wow, can't you understand? I love you, honey, for more than words can say.
And it's as straightforward as that, as Otis is just trying to confess his love as best he can. After this is Let Me Come Home, where my guess is life out on the road isn't easy on Redding, as he's really struggling with the distance between himself and his love. This one's more upbeat than the last, carrying a pretty decent rock groove and a steady tambourine to boot. Hell of a tune. Sing it, Otis.
Baby, yeah, girl, said I got to get home to you.
Now staying in the same territory lyrically is Open the Door. Redding is again missing his love and shedding some humility, admitting that he's made some mistakes, but at the end of the day, who hasn't, right? So he's pleading for her to forgive him and to welcome him back home. There's some great aspects to this one in my eyes, namely the jazzy drums, the brass, the organ is a great touch when it's present.
Look into my eyes. Can't you see I got to come on in?
But I am quite on the fence with the song overall, just because the intro, it kind of comes across more of like a skit, the way that's delivered, and it kind of loses me a bit there. And I would also have to say that the song is awfully repetitive.
Let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in, let me ease on in.
But to close out the first side of the record, we have another rocker in Don't Mess with Cupid. And here we're on the other side of love than we were on the previous track, because somebody's taken advantage of the love that Otis had to give, and so he's warning them, don't mess with Cupid because karma's gonna get you.
Cupid is not stupid, baby. Don't you mess with Cupid, baby.
But we rediscover our joy to open the second side of the album with The Glory of Love. It's an older tune, first being recorded by Benny Goodman all the way back in 1936, having been covered numerous times throughout the years as well.
When this whole world get tired of us, we'll have each other and all each other.
And it's all about the love and perseverance in relationships. Whatever hardship it is that you and your partner are going through, as long as you have each other's backs, the two of you should be able to make it through.
The glory it's the glory of love. Everybody know it's the story of.
But we're really going through a swing of emotions, because on the 7th track, I'm Coming Home, Otis is lovesick because his partner has left him, and he just wants to come back home, and he's really hoping that when he does, she'll still be there. But there is still hope, because the song doesn't sound entirely down, as perhaps Otis is optimistic that she may be there when he gets home. It's just a matter of whether he's being foolish or not, I suppose.
Hush, little darling, and don't you be blue. I'm coming home to see about you. You know I got to see my baby, see my one desire.
After this, we have Tramp, a song coming from Otis's final studio album, King and Queen, which was a collaborative effort between himself and Carla Thomas.
This side up.
And it's such a grooving tune with its swinging drums and its rolling piano and the brass that chimes in, but it's really not up my alley, because it's pretty much just a man and a woman bickering back and forth, and again, it just feels too skit-like. I'm pretty sure this song was a pretty decent hit back in the day too. I guess maybe just because it's pretty different. I mean, it's pretty different, I'll tell you that.
You straight from the Georgia woods.
That's good.
You know what? You wear overalls, big old broke iron shoes, and you need a haircut, Tramp.
Following this is another Redding rendition of an older song, this time The Hucklebuck. It's one of those songs that was made alongside a dance to do to it, so with that being said, there isn't really a whole lot of sustenance to the lyrics. We're just naming places all across the US, trying to encourage people to hucklebuck, which I guess was the biggest craze in 1949.
Royal peacock, no. Miami, Florida, going to the Island Club. Step over.
I'm not gonna lie though, overall it is a pretty solid grooving tune. Otis delivers a blunt message on this next one though, Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out, originally coming from his Soul album.
People spending my money, honey, Lord, and I just didn't care that long.
This one's another cover dating back to 1923 and by Jimmy Cox, telling the tale of a man who had a pretty decent sum of money. He would spend it on his friends, but now that that money's run dry, those same friends are nowhere to be seen. As such, it is low and bluesy, and the crew amps up the intensity to close out the song.
Nobody needs you, girl. Nobody wants you when you're down and out, Lord. And nobody has a good thing about you.
So to close out this compilation, we have a selection from his famed Otis Blue album, being Old Man Trouble.
Old man trouble. Please stay away from me. Oh, now.
And it sees him just trying to find some peace in his life, telling Old Man Trouble off, leave me alone. I've already got enough stuff going on. Just, let me get back up on my feet before you're, causing a mess my way again.
Sometime I get a little worried. Ooh.
The Dock of the Bay is available on all major formats, and as we've grown to see on this channel, old classic albums, oftentimes different countries' publishers would have their own artwork for the album, as is the case here with Spain and Venezuela. Additionally, there's some variety in the color of the album, which isn't entirely abnormal. In this case, we're mostly talking about the border of it, generally staying in a tan or bronze color scheme, but in Japan it was more of a yellow, Taiwan more of a red, and Greece more of a green. Furthermore, for the rest of the world, the cover you got would depend on which label's release it was, being from Stax, Volt, or Atco. That more psychedelic front would make reappearances occasionally in later years, and we'd also get the odd different release cover from Spain or Germany. So again, the Dock of the Bay was one last note for Redding to go out on. It ensures a stellar, lasting image of him, as it was well received by everybody, even landing on Rolling Stone's greatest albums of all time list at 161st. A number of other Redding compilations have come out since, but with this being so close to the time of his passing, a good portion of it being previously unreleased, and the tracklist being composed entirely by Redding's own producer Steve Cropper, this feels like the closest glimpse possible into the direction that Redding himself wanted to take his music. So I personally feel like this comes across as a very genuine release, which, as we've seen over time, is so easy to do wrong with posthumous releases. I think this may be his best known album, likely due to the timing of it and the story around it, but I do think it serves as a great introduction to Otis Redding. He's got a phenomenal voice. He's so good at displaying emotion, as he does across these soulful songs all about love, and one about doing the hucklebuck. With all that in mind, I'm going to be stamping the Dock of the Bay with an A- grading. There's a lot of good work in here. Really, Tramp is the only song I'm not crazy about, but even then it's got some redeeming qualities to it. I just think the most important thing to note with this is that while being a compilation, it is not a greatest hits album, so I do think there could be a better penultimate display of Otis Redding. But those are just my thoughts on Otis Redding and the Dock of the Bay. Let me know yours. As always, I've loved hosting you, and maybe you'll stick around for another. Maybe I'll see you again in the future. You let me know. I'll be here. But real quick, before we take off, what were your thoughts on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding? Did I rate it too high or did I rate it too low? You let me know down below, as well as anything else you might be thinking. Any other albums you might want me to check out. And that's the end of the video. Until next time, thanks.